Have you ever wondered who the greatest person was to ever walk the face of this planet? Of course, we would always say Jesus, right? He was the greatest. So let's say the second greatest. Who's the second greatest person to ever walk the face of this planet? Well, Jesus actually gives us the answer. The greatest person to ever live tells us who the greatest person ever was and who the greatest person could be. Because you see, Jesus' words, what he tells us is that there are two individuals. One is the greatest, but there's one who could possibly be greater. Let's find out who he is talking about. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 11 and verse 7 and following, "What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No. Those who wear fine clothes are in king's places. Then what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet, this is the one about whom it is written, I will send my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way before you." Who's he talking about? Well, let's keep reading. Verse 11, "Truly I tell you, among those born of women there has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist." Who is Jesus talking about? He's talking about his cousin John, whose sole purpose was to come down here and pave the way for him. What made John so great, and what made him the greatest person to ever walk the face of this earth? Well, two reasons from this text is that he came to do whatever it took to see to God's cause. John's whole purpose and whole mission in life was to see to God's cause and to pave the way for Jesus, to prepare hearts for Jesus and his teachings, and to prepare hearts for the kingdom, the church. In essence, John did a lot to help you and me get into the church by preparing the way for Jesus. What made John so great was that his whole mission in life was to see to the cause of the kingdom, to see to God's cause. But what else made him so great? Well, John was humble. We see that over and over again throughout Scripture, but also in here. Jesus compares him to these kings. He said, "Did you go out to see this men in fine clothing?" No, kings are that way. So why would a king not be so great? Because John was humble. John was greater than kings because of his humble spirit and willingness to lower himself to serve God and to serve others. John was so great because his whole mission was to see to God's cause, and he lived a humble life. But Jesus actually tells us something else. John was the greatest man to ever walk this earth, but, he says in verse 11, let's go ahead and read that again. "Truly I tell you, among those born of women there has not risen anyone greater than John the Baptist. Yet, whoever is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." Whoever is least in the kingdom of heaven. What is the kingdom of heaven? It's the church. People who are following Jesus, following that same Jesus that John came down to prepare the way for. Those of us who are preparing or who are living for Jesus have the potential to be greater than John. Isn't that amazing? John the Baptist, the cousin of Jesus, the man that every Christian knows about, the man that paved the way, that it was his whole mission in his life to pave the way for Jesus. We can be greater than him. How? It says, those who are least, those who are lowly, those who are the lower members of the church, the kingdom, are greater than he. You see, like John, if we choose to live our lives, our whole mission is to see to the cause of God, to see to his kingdom, then we can be even greater than John, Jesus says. If our whole cause is to lower ourselves and serve others, to live with humbleness in our life, then we can be greater than John. Jesus is looking for something specific in our lives, and it's that ability to be humble. Jesus wants us to be humble. John was the greatest man. To answer the question that we gave at the very beginning, John was the greatest man to ever live aside from Jesus. But Jesus tells us there are some who in the kingdom that we don't know, who are even greater than him. So how are we living for Jesus today? Are we living for his cause? Are we living to serve the church? Even if that means we don't get recognition, even if that means we don't get a pat on the back every once in a while, even if that means we don't get thank yous. If we are living in that light in this life, then we can know, based on the greatest man who ever walked this earth, Jesus, we can know based on his words that we are the greatest in the kingdom, even if no one else recognizes it. Jesus wants our mission to be all about him, and Jesus wants our lifestyle to be that which expresses humbleness by lowering ourselves and serving others. Because to be the least in the kingdom means to be the greatest in God's eyes. That's what Jesus said. Now let's take it to heart and apply it this week in our lives. Thank you for watching this week's episode of Jesus Said. Come back next week as we listen to more of his words.